Hey, future achievers! Are you ready to tackle college planning head on? In today's video, I'm going over the 6 essential steps you need to take to be successful in your college application process before it begins. Today, we're talking about pre-college planning or getting ready before you apply to colleges. This is generally grades 9 through 11, but if you're senior, we're gonna catch you up the best that we can. And I'm gonna go over the first one, which is the obvious one, which is grades. Every school you apply to, the first thing they will look at are your grades and GPA. So it's very, very important, even from 9th grade, to make sure that you are getting the best grades possible. Now you want to make sure that you do not have C's. They don't like to see C's. So A's and B's, you want to stay in that range. How many in GPA, that depends on what schools you're looking at applying to and how competitive they are, and it depends how much money that you need for school. But as a general rule, if you need funding, I would need to see at least a 3.5 or higher. You get more funding if you get more in like the 3.75 range. And for admission, and depending on the school, I really don't like to see you below a 3.2. Definitely not below a 3.0, but even less competitive schools, if you're above a 3.0, you should be okay. Again, I really like to see a 3.2 because a 3.0 starts making me really nervous. It starts limiting options. So you want to get good grades. Now, what they don't talk to you about are the everyday decisions you're going to make with those grades. I will often see students, you get to like junior year, we start the college application process, and it's very normal to see lower for them, that even could just be B's for some students for 9th grade. There's this transition, right? You're getting used to it. But if we start seeing lower grades, I can tell you exactly what it is as a teacher. It was late assignments, it was missing work, it was being disorganized, and we want to make sure that we avoid that at all costs. So I tell students, like, for example, let's say you have an algebra test the next day. It's very easy to be like, I don't need to study for that. It's fine. I'm going to game all night. It's that algebra test becomes important, okay? Doing the homework on time becomes very important, okay? It matters. So I'm not saying you have to like way overdo it and, get 120% in each class. But when I see students where like the difference between that A and a B means admission or not, or means funding or not, those choices become very important. So I want you to think about these things when you start making these decisions, because it does have consequences later when you go to apply for schools, and it can cause those kinds of problems, and they're completely avoidable if you just do the things to keep your grades up. The next thing to pay attention to, which goes along kind of with grades, is your course selection. Now, you're gonna see a theme throughout this is the college application process is a lot more art than science. There's no hard, fast rule of course selection. The general rule of this is you do not want to have C's. So if it came down to taking like an AP class that maybe you could get a C in, maybe it's not your strongest subject, or a regular class, you probably want to take the regular class because you don't want a C. However, you do want to take as many advanced courses as you can, because that will weight your GPA later for college admissions. Usually that's by one, like a 1.0 higher, but every school is a little different in how they do that. It doesn't matter as long as it's standardized across every admissions office at all the schools, which it is. But like if you took AP, for example, and got a B, which is a 3.0, it will weight to a 4.0 right on your weighted GPA. So that's where it's like you want to take as many as you can because you want the higher weighted GPA. However, you also want to avoid C's, and I also don't want students burning out. Like, I don't want them super stressed and in anxiety all the time as well. And I want them to do their other activities and sports and stuff. And if you have too heavy of a course load, that's gonna be hard. And what that means for every student is different. And usually with students, I give them ideas, but at the end of the day, I'm like, you know yourself better. So if you think you can handle, a whole load of AP classes and balance it with everything else and not lose your mind, great. If you can handle 2, that's fine. But finding the best combination of what that looks like for you is going to be what's most important. The next question I usually get asked about is activities. Usually when parents and students ask me this question, like they're looking for some hard, fast rule, like, okay, you need 200 volunteer hours, you need to do 3 clubs and 2 club sports, whatever it is. And this is a lot more art than science. So activities in general, so when you apply to colleges, most schools will use what's called the Common Application. But even if schools don't use that, which many do not, they still have some sort of way to track activities. But on the Common App, you are gonna get 10 spaces for activities. And an activity could be like a sport, or it could be, this volunteer activity. It could be paid work, it could be unpaid work. There's a lot of things that could be an activity. It's a flexible term. And you're gonna rank that from either the most important or the most time-consuming thing to the least. So for example, if you play basketball all 4 years of high school, that will be higher up on your activity list than, the 10 hours you did at the food bank, right? That might be lower on the list. But in general, you're gonna wanna have the longer you're in activity, the better, because you wanna show that, you're dedicated and committed and things like that. So a longer one, so something you did for 4 years, and or most time. So for example, I might have students where maybe you didn't do a volunteer activity, like let's say you go to a senior center and volunteer there, but you do it, for an hour once a week for 2 years, right? That looks better than going to the food bank and volunteering twice, which we really even can't even put that on your activity list because that's embarrassing. We can't tell them you did it twice. So longer and time. And what this looks like for students is different. So you want to explore clubs and things like that. I want you to explore interests, but I also don't want you to be like, oh, I gotta go to the food bank every week for 4 years. It should be something that you enjoy. So I have students, like for example, I have a student who just likes photography, and she volunteered for 4 years at the animal shelter, and she was responsible for taking pictures of all the new adoptees and posting them online. And so it was only, total like 5 or so hours a month, but she really liked it. And she's not even going into photography, and that's great. So I have students who do all kinds of things. Get creative with what you can do. This can also be paid work as well, so that counts too. But activities in general, you want to do finding the balance of what can you do that is as much as you can do in activities without sacrificing on your course load as well, and without completely stressing yourself out. So whatever that balance is for you, that is really important. The other thing that's important in your college planning phase, and is the most underestimated thing, because everybody's going to ask about grades, activities, these things. College tours are so vital for college planning. I do a different video where I go into more detail on tours and what you should be looking at and paying attention to. But very briefly, when you are looking at colleges, we need to collect data on this, okay? Because there's 4,000 colleges in the US. And until you see them, you don't know what you're looking for, okay? You might think you love a large school, but can you tell me, what does a large school mean? And I'm gonna tell you, it generally means 25,000 students or more, okay? Do you know what a medium-sized school is, or a small school? Do you know like locations? Do you actually know that you'll like that environment that it has? There's a lot of things to look at different schools, and you don't know what you like or don't like until you see them. And college tours take a lot of time to plan because there's only so many breaks during the school year. You know, you have summer stuff, but you're busy, and you know, families are busy, you know, especially if both parents working full time, maybe especially budget planning. It can be expensive, especially if you have to fly. So it just takes time, and you want to give yourself that time. You don't want to rush your tours. The biggest mistake I see people make is they'll say, oh, we're going to wait till we saw where they got accepted to go on their tours, which logically makes sense, but it's the worst idea ever, because you're giving yourself like a few months to go on all these tours of schools because you're waiting for an acceptance. You will not have time to get that in. You need to spread it out. An easy way to do this is if you're just on vacation or something and there's a college nearby, go ahead and tour it. And it doesn't even matter if you want to go there, okay? Because at that point, again, we're collecting data. You need to see, oh, do I like this large school? Do I like this environment? Like, you'll see things, and you just need to get that. So, and then, of course, just local tours. A mistake I see here, though, is, you know, we do get busy and time goes fast. And so parents will be like, okay, we got to go. And the school could be like 20 minutes away, but you're like, oh, yeah, we'll go next weekend. Oh, yeah, we'll go next month. And then all of a sudden it's been 2 years and we're starting college planning and you still haven't toured. So making it, you know, I don't want it to be stressful, but higher on the priority list because it will take stress away in the future. The last thing to pay attention to with college planning is testing, like SATs or ACTs. I get asked this a lot. I'll go into a different video where I go into much more detail about this topic and creating a study plan and your options, all these things. But for this purpose, in the college planning phase, I will tell you as of today, you know, post-COVID, we have SATs in general. Most, very, very, very large majority are test optional. Many colleges have gone what's called test free, which means like they won't even look at your scores whatsoever. And then they have announced, some schools have announced that they are going to require testing in the future, but that's generally much more highly competitive schools. So think Ivies and top 50, top 100 schools. And so, but my students applying to those schools, we usually have them test anyway, because in practice, all those students kind of have been for the most part. So that's something to think about. You might not have to take a test. I never will recommend taking a test if I don't feel like the student has to. So like my students, again, who are applying to much more competitive programs or competitive schools, I'm like, yeah, if we can get a good test score, you want to do it. If not, why? It's such a waste of time. Nobody wants to study for that. But you want to start thinking about it. The other thing is a lot of times people will take these tests a little too late. And so because I'm thinking like energy, you want to kind of spread this out a little bit. So in the spring of junior year, it's like go time. Like it's making your list, getting final tours in, starting essays, applications, all those things. And you do not want to add test prep to that because you're also going to have your normal class load and activities and things. And it's a lot. So you want to be done taking that test as the latest fall of junior year. That way in the spring, you're ready for college applications and your testing is done. So a lot of my students will take the test like second part of sophomore year, or they'll take the August test like going into junior year. That's ideal, so it's just out of the way. My biggest advice for that is to do it one time. A lot of schools now I'm seeing in practice, because they'll talk about super scoring, and which is where you submit just your best scores. I'm finding in practice, schools that are test optional, I'd say 40% of my students who are submitting scores, they have to submit all their test scores. They're not like super scored. So if that's the case, you really want to take this test one time and take it seriously. A lot of students are like, yeah, I gotta study for it, It's a beast of a test. Give yourself time. You need minimum 3 months, okay, minimum. And what usually happens is students are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna study for it. They take the test and they're like, oh, I didn't do as well as I should have studied more. And then they retake it. I'm like, why? Like, just do it one time, put your all into it, take that thing once, do the best you can, and be done with it. You don't want to drag that thing out. So if you need to take a test, which you may not have to, then you want to be ahead and just really plan and know that you can study for it. If not, maybe you don't even need to take the test. Something really big to cover during this pre-college planning phase that I feel is very often overlooked, and that is what I will call the soft skills. And I'm noticing a really big problem in this post-COVID, especially because students started learning, like, they don't understand what deadlines are. Like, they don't understand, like, dead, right? Like, done, final, line, cannot cross. They don't understand that because a lot of teachers are taking a lot of late work. So they don't understand it. They also don't understand things like test retakes, okay? They don't know how to manage their time. And then you have the normal, right? Like, note-taking, study skills. And I know it sounds super boring, but when you get to college, you know, I have to tell students, I'm like, you understand when you get to college, you can't retake a test, right? Because I'll have students, they're like, I just had a student the other day, and they're like, I didn't sleep very well, and so, like, I didn't do great on the test, I'm gonna retake it. And I'm like, you know, in college, they don't care. Like, I had to take finals, and I went 3 days with no sleep because I just had too much going on. Like, I still had to take my test. So, like, I did the best I can, but that's important to learn, okay? And we also can be kind of hard on students with certain things because we're like, what kind of note, like, why didn't you study for that test? And like, they don't know how to study. It's a skill. So yes, as educators and in our school system, we should be doing a better job of teaching students these things. But at the end of the day, like, I understand it's a boring topic, but it's really important. We also don't talk about things like energy management with students enough. So things like, you know, like we talk about now, we didn't talk about it so much back, but how is your energy distributed? Okay, for example, I am a time blocker, okay? I don't do well on tasks if I have 20 minutes, okay? Yeah, certain things like, okay, I'll do the dishes real quick, maybe check a couple emails, you know, respond to text messages in a short time. If I have like a project, like if I have to write an essay, I can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna work on this for 20 minutes. Like, I need a few hours, okay, to just sit and I need to focus, okay? But I can get 4 hours worth of work done in 2 if I can time block it. That's how my brain and my energy works, okay? Other people are totally opposite. They really have to break it up. So paying attention to those things, it's really important that students pay attention now and can learn these kinds of things so that when they get to college, they are more successful. Do you want to stay on track in your college journey? These are things that parents ask me all the time, like they don't know what to do and when, like they're totally lost. If that is you, you will want to go in the description and grab my college timeline talk. This is the #1 most thing I am requested from any grade level, including seniors. It will show you exactly what to do by year and by month so that you have a successful college application process. It also comes with a printable PDF, which is nice. You put it on the fridge or board, wherever you put your organization stuff, so you make sure to stay on track. If you would like this, get the link in the description, and that will be